In this video, I'll explain what is functional interface with some examples. Before getting into functional interface, let's talk about interface and implementation in Java. So typically all Java programs, when we write a implementation code for a particular interface. So you have a business logic, and we also always think about what is the contract for that business logic? What is the interface for that business logic? And then we write the interface first, and then we implement that interface. The reason we do this interface implementation is to adapt for the change in requirements. So you can, if there is a change in requirement, you can have a different implementation class for that same interface, so that you don't have to break your interface. So the clients are the code which is calling your functionality. So they typically call the interface. They don't call the implementation class directly, so that you are protected breaking the existing clients. So you code for the interface and you have multiple implementation classes. This is all good, and it worked well for a few years. So now in starting Java 8, they've introduced something called functional interface. What is this functional interface, and why do we need this functional interface? Can't we just use the existing interface? Yes, you can use the existing interface. So the main goal of the functional interface is to support functional type of programming, which is the Lambda expressions. So the functional interfaces, as a definition, has like one default abstract method. I repeat, the functional interfaces should have only one abstract method, so that the Lambda expressions understand that's the method we are implementing for.
Similar to what we see on the left side, where we have interface and implementation class. So the functional interface, the implementation is a Lambda expression. So as I told earlier, the functional interface has like one abstract method, and Lambda expression is a way to implement that abstract method. So you don't have to create a new class for the implementing the interface methods. So all we need is just an expression. So you can have like multiple expressions with a different implementation for that functional interface. So it's hard to understand now. So but I'll explain in detail when we do some coding later part of this video. But for now, just remember functional interface has like one abstract method, and Lambda expressions are the implementation for that abstract method. Let's see some functional interface examples. So these are the functional interface available in Java today. So these are, of course, some of the functional interfaces. So runnable, comparable, these two specifically has been around since like Java 1.4 or even before that. So runnable is for creating a new thread, and comparator is to compare objects. But the other ones like predicate, supplier, and consumer, those has been introduced as part of Java 8. So these are new function interfaces, and it's part of Java, I think, util function package. So this one by default, it has like a one abstract method, and that's what we are going to implement it in, like is a Lambda expression. Okay, so of course this is not the complete list. There are like ton of like functional interfaces. So this is a link where you can find all the functional interfaces. If I go to that link, we can see this. These are the functional interfaces available. So by consumer, by function. So if it's in that package Java util function. So every functional interface has a specific contract. Okay, what is the input and what is the output, and what does it support? What is the return type? So there are some of the most commonly used out of this entire list, as like a predicate is one of the commonly used one. So predicate takes in an input, generic type of t. So you can pass in any type. So it can be a custom object, or it can be a string, integer, boolean, or anything. So you can pass any data type here, and then the output for that method here, as we can see, the test is the one abstract method. The input, it takes t as the input, which is any data type, and the return type here for this method is boolean. So predicate by the name, what it means is this is kind of testing uh, whether if you think about it as like a if-else condition, right? So is it true or false? So you pass in some object and then determine whatever logic you want to do. You can write it in the expression, functional expression, and then return it as a boolean true or false. So I'll explain it in the code example when we do it. But for now, this is one of the most commonly used uh, functional interface. Let's look at some of the other functional interfaces. So consumer is one of the functional interface which takes in one input. T is the generic data type, and there is no output for this. And the next one, next commonly used, maybe function. Function has like one input and then one return type. So you can think of scenarios where you have to pass in one input object and then expecting another input object, and you can define it in input as in T, as in return as in R. So you can give any data type. So any custom object or string, integer, or any data type, you can use it. Uh, so uh, so how do we determine like which functional interface to use? So should we use a consumer, or should we use a function, or like by consumer or by function? So there are a lot of functional interfaces, right? So whenever you have a requirement, business requirement, you'll have to think about what is the method I would write. Okay, so to achieve that functionality, you would write a method, right? So whether it takes in one argument or two arguments, or like without a return type or with a return type. So you'll have to think of that requirement first, and then come check out this list and see which one fits the requirement. So not one functional interface like satisfies all the requirement, right? So if you have a, like for example, method which takes in one argument and then returns a boolean, then predicate is the way to go. So these are the functional interfaces. So is that all, or can we have our custom functional interfaces? Yes, we can have our own custom functional interface. So you can write any interface, and then um, if as far as you have like a abstract method, you can call that as a functional interface. And on top of that, you can also specify add functional interface in that interface, so which will enforce that one abstract method, or else it won't enforce it. You'll not see a compilation error if you add more methods to that interface. Next, we'll see what we are going to demo today. So let's assume a movie rating application like IMDb. So you have a list of movies, and then uh, our requirement is to list all the movies released this year. Okay, so that is one of the requirement. And the next requirement we have is list movies by actor. Okay, so these are two different requirements. So if I have to code for this requirement, so I could very well create a method in the class and then just to implement it to list all the movies and list all the actors. So it's straightforward implementation. It's not a complex one. But how do we achieve this using functional interfaces so that the code looks clean and readable, than writing some verbose code, and which requires like multiple say classes for the implementation and having a separate interface? Can we use functional interfaces, leverage the functional interfaces to implement this requirement? Yes, we can do it. So that's what we are going to see in this example. Let's move on to the coding part. I'm going to open Spring Toolsuit. You can use IntelliJ or Eclipse. So I'm going to create a new class here. Let's call it as a predicate demo. So I'm going to use predicate in this sample. So public static void main, and then create the class. So here I've created this class. So now our requirement is like list all the movies released in this year. So to do this, I need a movies object, custom object. Okay, so let's create a movie, just a simple Pojo bean, and call it as a movie. And in this movie object, if you think about it, we need like three attributes here. So one is which year the movie is released, the name of the movie, and the actor name. So I'm just copying it to save some time, and just doing a getter setter generation, um, and it's nothing but a simple Java bean. So there is nothing complex here. Um, so we have created our movie object. Now let's go to the requirement. So uh, how do I get the list of movies, right? So you could call an API to get the list of movies. To keep it simple, I'm just going to hard code the list of movies here, create an array list, and then store those values. Just to save some time, I'm just copying the array list in here. So I'm just creating a list of movie objects, and then going to populate some data in the movie object list. Okay, so in theory, you could just get it from backend API. So here I'm just first adding the first movie list here. So movie one is it's a new object. I'm creating it and just adding the name of the movie, actor, and the release year. Okay, so release year, if you notice, 2021. So this is our requirement to get the list of movies released in 2021. So I'm going to add one more movie list to just to test it out, and another movie released in 2019. So I'm going to add those two movie objects in the list, movie list, so that we have an array list which has a list of movies. Okay, so in this array list, my requirement is to get the movies which are released in 2021. So to implement this functionality, so you could write a simple method like list of all the movies released in this year. So this year is 2021. So I could just create a simple method and then loop through this list of movies object and then print it out. So that's what I'm going to do first without any functional interface or lambdas, and then translate into Lambda expression. Okay, so that you understand like how the boilerplate code gets converted into much more readable format. Okay, so this one is find movies related in 2021, released in 2021, and I'm just going to write private void, static void, um, just a simple find movies in 2021. And the input for this method is the list. Okay, movie list is the input for this method, and then I'm just going to print it here. So I'm not going to return anything out of this method, just for the demo purpose. So here, what I have to do is to iterate through the list of movies and then find the movies released in 2021. So I'm just copying the code for saving some time. So we're iterating the movie list and then getting the release year and then comparing it to see if it's 2021, and then just printing the name of the movie. Okay, so our first requirement is, so I just have to call this method from here, find movies in 2021, passing this list. So our first requirement is technically done. So if I run this program now, so you'll get the master, that's the movie name of released in 2021. Okay, so there is no functional interface, there is no, it's a simple method. Uh, we iterated through that list and found the answer for our requirement. So our next requirement is to list movies by actor. So in this list of movies, I'm going to find out a specific actor movies. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to find out the movies acted by VJ. So I'm going to copy the functionality of that method. So just to save some time. Um, so here, so I just copied this method. So print static void find movies by actor. So this gets list of movies and I'm iterating through the movie and just getting the actor name equals move VJ, and I'm printing the name of the movie. Okay, so these two methods, uh, our requirement is done pretty much. So I can just call this method here, find movies by actor, and then I can just print the name of the movie. Um, so find movies by actor and just pass in the list of movies, uh, and that will print the movies acted by a specific actor. Okay, so if I run this, it will work. So the first, I think both are same. I'm just going to change this to 2019 to get a different movie. 2019 here. Find movies in 2019. Okay, so let's copy this method name. Okay, so here it should print two different movie names now. So first one, 2019 movie released in 2019, and the second one is the movie acted by VJ. So uh, our two requirements are pretty much done. So there is nothing wrong in this coding. So you can just push through production and you're good to go with it. But if you look at this, there is a lot of boilerplate code. So tomorrow there could be a new requirement and you'll end up adding one more method. And if you even if you have to externalize this into a different class and interface, it will add a lot of complexity with respect to the coding. And it's not it's not readable, so it's not clear of what it is doing and all this boilerplate code. So that's where the functional interface and everything comes into. So if you look at this, this is the one line of logic we have. So movie.get release year equal to 2019. That is the only business logic we have. So everything else in this method is all like a boilerplate code. So you're iterating through that and just having a method name, and that's not required. So can we externalize this into some sort of Lambda expression, right? So uh, and using some existing functional interface and everything. Uh, if you think about it, so what this condition does is like movie.get release year equals to 2019. It resembles the predicate functional interface, because the condition itself returns boolean. So the predicate, the one of the requirement of predicate interface is the abstract method in the predicate is like it takes in an object. Okay, so this is our movie object, and then it returns a boolean. So in our case, movies released in 2019, uh, that is a boolean return. It returns boolean. The statement movie.get release here equals to the 19 returns boolean. So we could very well use predicate to determine this condition and externalize that business logic. Okay, let's write one more method to see how we can change these two methods into something different, like using functional interface and predicates. So I'm just going to make this as a generic method. So public static void main get movies. Okay, and then so this is going to get list of movies, and then what I'm going to pass to this method is I'm going to pass apart from this movie list, I'm going to pass a predicate here. Okay, I'll explain why this is required in a minute. So the predicate is is on movie object. Okay, so the logic what we are running and on these two methods is on movie object. So that's where we use the predicate, and the input to that predicate is a movie object. Okay, so here just store it in some variable. Let's call it as a movie predicate. Let's import predicate here, and then yeah, let's okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm still going to iterate it. Okay, so let's iterate this movie list, and instead of writing this business logic, which is the get the release year equals 2019, or uh, movie acted by a specific actor, so I'm going to use the predicate to do that logic. Movie predicate dot test. Test is that abstract method we saw just a minute back. So here, what I'm going to do is uh, I'm going to send in each movie object to this predicate. Okay, so when you're iterating through, and then only if this condition is true, I'm going to print it. Okay, so in at this point, this test means nothing. Okay, so you are coding to an interface. If you think about it, it is kind of an interface, right? So you're coding for an interface, which in this case ended up being a functional interface. So you implement it through an Lambda expression. Okay, so here all I'm going to do is like system.out.println and movie.getName. Okay, so if I run this now, if I call this method and run this now, it will not work. Okay, so we need to pass the Lambda expression predicate argument. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So all this method does is, this is very generic method. It doesn't have any specific business logic. So all it does is it takes in predicate. The predicate is the business logic. Okay, so this is the way we can parameterize the business logic, and you can use it in any classes you want. So you could have like in an application like IMDb, you could have like 50 different classes. So you can have like different predicate conditions, and you can pass it to this generic method. So in this, logic is simple, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you think of a complex logic, you're uh, basically parameterizing the behavior and then just passing it around. So that's one of the powerful concept in the functional interface and Lambda expressions. Okay, here I'm going to call this method the generic method which I just wrote. So get movies, and the first argument is movie list, what we created. and the second argument is the movie predicate. So this is the Lambda expression. This is the implementation for the functional interface. So how do we write the Lambda expression? So Lambda expressions, as you remember, like the left side is the left side of the arrow mark is the argument. So in our case, the argument is a movie. You can use any variable name, so m. Okay, so this will type to the specific object because of the argument we are passing in. So m arrow mark, so you can just do m dot. So if you see m dot as like you get all the attributes in the movie object. Um, so we're going to get release year equals 2019. So this returns a Boolean value. So as you can see, we are sending in one movie object as an input, and the return is a Boolean value. So this is the contract for the predicate functional interface. It takes in one object, and then the output is the Boolean is the output. So for that test abstract method. So it fits in well with our requirement. So both our requirements are just a Boolean expression, and if you run it, let's clear the console and run it once. And yeah, so the first output is there. The first two outputs are from the traditional methods, and the last one is from the Lambda expression we wrote using that predicate functional interface. So uh, yeah, we could do this similar for the second requirement also. So get movies. I'm just going to pass in the movie list, and uh, our second requirement is movie dot get actor dot equal ignore case list movies by actor. So uh, we're just going to copy that line number 48. So m arrow mark. So movie m dot get actor dot equals ignore case vj. So this returns again Boolean, and we are passing in the movie as an object, movie as an input object. So this is the predicate argument to that general method we just wrote. So let's run this and see if it works. Okay, so here the first two are like from the traditional methods implementation, and the last two are through predicate functional interface. So the predicate input we get to this method, predict movie predicate dot test. This is generic enough. Whatever lambda expression we pass in, so that condition will get executed at this point. So and then if the condition is true, then it is going to print this next line. So it is either based on, say, let's say it changes to 2020, and I run it, so I don't have any movies for 2020. So it should get rid of that third one. Yeah. So it's that simple. You can just change that predicate expression, and then your implementation is changed. So you're not changing the generic method. You're just keeping the generic method as it is. So lambda expressions and functional interfaces are one of the powerful features of like Java 8. So I could just get rid of all this like boilerplate code of like creating for each and every requirement one method, and then have a generic method which takes in the lambda expression as an implementation. So if you're working as a Java program, definitely just start using lambda expressions and functional interfaces. So if you see this, all it takes is like just a generic method and just two lambda expressions. We are done with our requirement. So hope you like this video. Uh, Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.